Thank you, Mr. Steele. Good evening, Council. Good evening, Mayor Yates and Mr. Maestros. Thank you very much for allowing us some time on your agenda this evening. We come to you this evening following more than a year of conversation with members of our school community through action teams. And the Board of Education a year ago directed that I should help to create a strategic plan which will be the roadmap for the Twinsburg City School District moving into the future. Part of the work that has been done in regard to building the strategic plan is talking about the district's facilities and grounds. And as you know, for many years, we have had lots of conversation about George G. Dodge Intermediate School and about potentially renovation or a building project to address some of the needs that our students and our staff experience in a day-to-day basis at Dodge. And so this evening we want to talk to you about the facilities assessment that was initially done a couple years ago, and through the action team planning process this past school year has been revised. So we're going to share with you some numbers this evening. In addition to that, we're going to share with you some conceptual plans. I just wanted to let everyone know this is conceptual in nature, and so the numbers that you're going to be seeing this evening are approximates and nothing is definite. The purpose for being out before you this evening is our intention to make sure that, number one, that our elected officials and our residents have an opportunity to see the work that has been going on behind the scenes, but more than anything else, to provide feedback to the school district. Our school district belongs to the residents here in our three communities, and it will be the desire that the residents inform the school board regarding any movement on any facilities project. So tonight we bring you the first of many presentations. We are hopeful as this project moves down the line, we'll hopefully be back to provide you some updates from the information, the feedback that we gather. Last week we were at the Twinsburg Township meeting. On July 9th we will be at the Village Council at Reminderville, and we will continue doing this as soon as the school year gets underway with our staff members and our parents and the rest of the residents who are interested in being a part of the conversation. My colleague Chad Welker is here this evening, as well as Mr. Salura, who's a member of the Board of Education, and I'm sure both gentlemen would like to participate in the conversation this evening. So to begin, I'm going to ask Chad to give you an overview of some of the facilities work that was done this school year, last school year, and some of the ideas that actually piqued the interest in moving a project forward.
Thank you. So we are working with Let's Go Associates. They are one of the architectural firms who actually developed for schools a framework for evaluating school facilities. So we did a facilities master study in 2016. We updated it, as Superintendent Powers referenced, here this year. So this first option of what we're looking at is if we did absolutely nothing. So we maintain our existing facilities. There is, of course, a cost to maintaining our existing facilities as they are aging. And so this is looking at the approximate cost to maintain our existing facilities over the next 5 to 10 years. So we look at our high priority items, our middle priority items that are identified, that mostly in the areas of HVAC, electrical, plumbing, roofing, paving, those different areas. So you'll notice that each of the buildings from Wilcox all the way to the high school, there are approximate costs there based on the next 5 to 10 years. So Wilcox at 3.1 million, Bissell at 5.2. Dodge, you notice, is a larger number at the 22 million. RB Chamberlain at 2.5, the high school at 3, and Tiger Stadium at about $500,000. And this again is stressing high and middle priority items. So the other areas, bus garage, storage building, and Board of Ed has zero allocated for this purpose. So the grand total is about $36.3 million. And of that, 2/3 of it is really Dodge. The issues at Dodge that we've identified, one is the HVAC, like the infrastructure of the system. There's about $4 million worth of renovations just in HVAC alone. The electrical infrastructure, plumbing, windows, finishes. One of the big pieces, though, is the classroom size. So the average classroom size is somewhere around 550 to 600 square feet. When we're building buildings or when other districts are building buildings in Ohio, the minimum size that's recommended is 900 square feet, just to give you an idea, to support 21st century learning. So you can see that the classroom size, it's about 2/3 of the size. So that 22 million also incorporates needing to do something with the classroom size. And then at the bottom, we make a reference to the 2/3 rule. And so just like if you're renovating your house, if you're going into something, doing a renovation project, you don't know everything that's behind the walls. So same sort of concept when renovating a school. Generally, if the cost of renovating a building is 2/3 the cost of constructing a new building, it's recommended that you build new because, of course, there's other things that you might run into.
So as I mentioned at the beginning of this presentation, there has been a lot of conversation in our community about George G. Dodge Intermediate School. And primarily it is because the building as it stands today really doesn't suffice for students who are learning to be successful in the 21st century. And so moving this project forward, the Facilities Action Team focused its efforts on the replacement of the Dodge building. The grade bands that we're going to suggest this evening are just conceptual in nature. Again, we have not engaged members of our staff yet. We have not engaged very many members of the community at this point. And so what I'm going to suggest this evening are just ideas that have been grown out of the feedback we were able to gather from the facilities assessment. And I just wanted to put that out front. So moving into a new building project, what is initially being considered as an option is that we would build a new 6 to 8 grade band building, a middle school, for approximately 900 students. And when we say 900 students, the other thing that we need to let you know is that we are currently working with a vendor to do another enrollment study. The last enrollment study was done in 2013, and at that time, I actually worked with Larry Finch because the city was doing a similar study, and we sort of compared results, and they were spot on as far as the district enrollment being pretty steady over the past few years and moving into the future. But with some of the development going on in the village of Reminderville and in the township and here in the city, we want to make sure that our enrollment numbers are as specific as we can get them through the projection process of an enrollment study. So that is additional data that we are awaiting, and again, that may ultimately change some of the numbers here on this conceptual plan. But in speaking about building a replacement school for Dodge, we are currently considering 3 site options. The first is to rebuild on the current Dodge site. Problem with that, as you know, is we share the property with the treatment plant. And on a nice warm spring day or fall day, it's difficult for our students to be outside playing on the property just because of the aroma that's in the air. And we get a lot of negative feedback about that. So potentially the residents would prefer that that property not be used for school building. Second option would be to look for the purchase of new property. The Board of Education does not own a lot of property, and so looking around the city of Twinsburg, you know, we are used to sort of a campus feel to the Twinsburg City School District. There isn't a lot of property directly nearby the current building, so that was the second option. And then the third one is to take a look at our current property, and what you have in front of you there, the top site is the site plan for the current Dodge lot, and the bottom is the high school site plan. You can see the boys soccer practice field is in the bottom left-hand corner. You can see where we have a baseball diamond that is used for some of our practice games, and the City Rec League uses that often. And then you can see where the fitness center is, the extra spillover parking that is used by our students and the fitness center patrons, as well as the parking lot, which is the student lot, and the bus parking lot, which is right off Tiger Trail and Paw Point up to the top. So those are the three options that we're looking at, and right now we're going to focus on option 3, which is a potential build project over on the high school property.
So as we mentioned, the 2/3 rule, 22 million to renovate Dodge as opposed to 31.5 million, so it's it's beyond the 2/3 rule. In addition, with those results, we have other estimates to address. For instance, moving the baseball field, moving the soccer field, which we'll show renditions of. We are allocating some money in for flexible furniture, which Superintendent Powers will talk about on the next slide. Trying to move the high school athletic fields to Dodge at about $800,000. In order to do some of this project, you would also need to abate and demolish Dodge, relocate transportation to Dodge, and we'll show pictures of that in the upcoming slide. There are district-wide paving repair projects that are necessary, including the access road between RBC and THS. That access road potentially in the next 5 to 10 years would need some attention. Repairing and replacing our RBC roof, it's beyond its useful years, and playgrounds at RBC, and that's due to the fact of looking at this rendition. The proposed grade alignment would be Wilcox would stay a pre-K through first grade building, Bissell a 2-3, but then RB Chamberlain would become a 4-5 building in this schematic. So if RB Chamberlain was a 4-5 building, it would of course need playgrounds. So we're allocating some money for playgrounds, and then the new middle school and existing high school. So as you can see through this, to maintain our facilities, about $36 million. To do some of these renovations, it would total about $43 million, a little over $43 million.
Just an aside, we didn't mention it earlier, that the high school bonds will be paid off in 2021. And so the Board of Education is considering a project aligned with the point at which the high school bonds would be paid off, which is a significant thing here for the residents of our community. What we mentioned, what Chad mentioned, is this flexible furniture and 21st century learning. When we've been presenting this program several times now, I said to Chad this morning, well, we know what flexible furniture is, but maybe our residents would not. So we inserted the slide today. And over at Dodge and at Bissell this past year, teachers have been piloting something called the Blended Learning Model Project. And part of it is helping the students to become independent in their use of technology and to differentiate instruction based upon student needs. But 21st century learners need to learn how to communicate and collaborate. And you really can't do that in straight lines of desks. And so what we know is that in order for our students to be successful and learn how to operate in the world of the 21st century, our classrooms have to start to look like that. And so you can see that in that particular photo, we have various heights of tables and chairs. We have various configurations of how students are working together in collaborative space, and we also have opportunities for students, as that young man on the upper left-hand corner is working by himself. What we know is sometimes sitting for an entire day is difficult for adults. Imagine being a child who is a very active person, and we know that through our project of last school year, students are learning very well in an environment that is considered 21st century because they can choose their options and are able to be more direct in what they're learning and how they're learning.
So within the second option, we wanted to show a few conceptual drawings, and again, we want to stress that they are conceptual. All the different drawings, if we were to pursue one, there's actually a year design process that we would embark on, gathering additional community feedback to make sure that it's meeting the needs of the community. But this is our existing high school site that we were referring to. And then here's an overlay of what a new 3-grade building could look like, or 6-8 building. It would be a 2-story building. Some of the items that we would be looking at, one is separating the bus traffic from the car traffic, so you can see how that's separate. That's a big piece of any design. We're trying to make sure that we would maintain based on some feedback we've received already, some additional parking for the community center and the overflow parking. But again, this is a design or initial conceptual phase, so what it might look like in the long term might be different than this. In fact, more than likely it would be. But this would be a rendition of the 6-8 building. The other consideration that we're concerned about with this is making sure that we address egress issues. So we've identified that there's only one form of egress for the high school currently. And so we would be wanting to do something to review that, whether it be additional access through the back of the building or going into Ravenna Road at another spot. Of course, there would need to be extensive traffic studies and related to that, but that is one issue that we've been talking through in regards to this plan.
So it's very important for the Board of Education to make sure that if we're building a project on fields that are currently used by especially our rec programs, that we're going to replace them one-to-one. And so back to the Dodge property, I initially indicated that if we're going to build the new school over on the high school campus, that we would be displacing a boys soccer field as well as a baseball field. And so if you take a look over at the Dodge site plan as we currently know it, you see the varsity baseball field is in the lower right-hand corner. You see where the Dodge outline of the building is, the current parking lot, the old track when that was a junior high, and a football field. And so we would want to move from across the street some of the fields. So what we have conceptually here for you to consider this evening, starting with the varsity field, that would of course remain the same. It's one of the gems here in our school community. We would move the high school field from across the street to the where Chad has the pointer there. We would renovate the current field over at the Dodge property. It's in the need of some significant renovation. We would be moving the boys' practice soccer field right there and the girls' practice soccer field, which is actually located where that parking lot design currently is. You notice that there's a dotted line. That's the current outline of the Dodge building. Underneath that would be the new bus garage, which is the tan object right in the middle, and it's surrounded by parking spaces. If you know anything about our transportation garage, it is in the need for renovation. This summer we're actually residing it just so that it has a curb appeal more than anything else, and we took care of some roofing issues that we had last winter. But the current design of buses don't even really fit inside the new, the old bus garage. So with this new garage, it would actually be the dimensions to be able to fit our vehicles so that the mechanics can close the garage doors and actually work on the vehicles in a good, warm, safe space. And we would also consider having the last bay be a bus wash bay. Currently, during the winter, we actually lease some space from the Brecksville Broadview Heights School. So the buses go out to Brecksville Broadview Heights School District to get washed so that we can maintain the undercarriage. In doing this, we're able to use our own space to maintain the buses. And in doing so, we hope to extend the life of some of those vehicles. The other thing I want to point out on this is, as you know, Council and Mayor Yates, throughout the last year, we talked about some trailheads on the board property to connect some of these trails that are all over the community. So we would be interested in putting a trailhead there in that parking lot space, which is right by the trail that leads behind the Dodge property there.
So finishing out the plan for the second option would be, this is the existing RB Chamberlain site. The major renovations there besides the roofing would be the addition of playground areas. This is currently where the transportation bus garage is, or here, and that would be how RBC would situate. And we try to make sure that we're separating parent and bus traffic or vice versa in that process, but that would be in option number 2. And so, otherwise, furthermore, we've been talking with a number of the members of the community. We've been talking with our facilities strategic planning group, and through that, we've received additional ideas, and we wanted to share some of those ideas with you. Again, all these are conceptual, and they keep evolving every single day. Yesterday, we had just some additional input as well. So we continue to adjust our plan based on the feedback that we receive.
So one of the ideas that came forward through conversations that I had with Laura Leonard over at the Twinsburg Public Library is her vision for the library to expand in its space. Laura is very interested in there being an auditorium that could be used for a multi-purpose space. Additionally, we have had conversations about the library patrons being able to use Twinsburg High School in the evening for adult education and such. At the same point, the Board of Education office is out of space. And the other challenge that we have as a school district is when we want to provide professional development to our staff during the school day, we don't have a space to do that unless we move students out of a computer lab or out of a large room in order to hold professional development. And so this next idea was born out of those several concerns. And this next idea is actually to build an annex a building that would connect both the Twinsburg Public Library with Twinsburg High School in the green space that's located right across the street here. It's an interesting project in the extent that it would be used by both residents who are interested in going to the library, Twinsburg Public Library, as well as for our students. One of the challenges that we have is that in today's public schools, we want to provide opportunities for students to engage in makerspace activities. Dr. Hebert, the principal at the high school, would like to renovate the current media center at Twinsburg High School into a full-throttle makerspace with robotics and 3D printers and all the kinds of things that you have in a makerspace. But we also have the need for students to be able to do research, get into the books and do research. And so this project would allow our students to travel over to the library during the school day and do the kinds of things that we remember that we used to do in the media center, basically the research, while the current media center at the high school would become this makerspace opportunity for our students. Additionally, although this conceptually has the annex building attached to the A pod of the high school, this is just conceptual in nature. I'm not quite sure if that would be the very best place for it. But there would be the intention then to put additional parking spaces on the front lawn of the high school, which would service the annex building for both library patrons as well as members of the school district who need to use that space. One of the things that we know is that access to Ravenna Road may be problematic because you have one stoplight and then there's another place to stop. So as Chad indicated, this would really need further study. And Laura is currently talking about her project, and that's the parking lot, and I'm not going to speak for her, but she has some traffic flow issues over at the library parking lot that we hope to be able to address with a greater project, including the school district.
So as we mentioned throughout our community feedback, one of the items that consistently has been brought up is parking at our stadium. And so this is our existing site. One of the things that we currently do is for excess parking, we're parking on our fields pretty much anywhere that we can find a spot where we're trying to do something. So this would essentially build a gateway or a grand entrance to our stadium, which would be located in the northeast corner of the stadium based on this conceptual drawing. And then there would be over 575 spots in that location. This is where existing Hoon Field is. And so you'd also have parking on the side here for the field house for the coaches, players, things like that. We'd be able to potentially get additional parking over by the old bus garage, and then update some of our fields. So the other thing is that some people park over by the tennis courts, and so there's a proposal to consider a new sidewalk going alongside to provide easier access to the stadium. So again, trying to address one of the concerns that was brought up from the community.
And as we indicated, when we consider any of these conceptual projects, we recognize that any of the fields that we're displacing need a home. And so back over to George G. Dodge, its current property, there's a conceptual drawing of how we could potentially move the fields that would need to be relocated from the Stadium Gateway project across the street to Dodge. So basically, the Dodge property would become athletic fields, and the school district's transportation department, as well as our maintenance garage and a place for our maintenance staff to do their various projects. But in this particular conceptual site plan, you can see the addition of moving the girls' soccer field across the street, in addition to the baseball diamond that is in the need of relocation to provide for the extra parking spots on what is currently the front lot of R.B. Chamberlain Middle School. You can see that we're going to extend the parking spaces because with that much activity going around, especially this time of the year, there would need to be plenty of parking for our parents and residents. The trailhead is right there. We understand the importance of that to the city, so we've included that. In addition, there would be a new restroom and changing facility for our athletes and for the rec leagues maintained by the board here too. So those are the relocated fields. We're excited to understand that that could all fit across the street. Of course, there would be considerations for the residents that live nearby. One of the thoughts that was brought up at the trustee meeting last week was you're making a very quiet place kind of noisy in the summertime. And so how would you address that with the residents that now live in those new homes that border the Dodge property? So obviously those are residents that we have to engage in a conversation about the potential relocation of the fields. But for the sake of this presentation this evening, we're just happy to know that we have space to relocate the fields and that we have the ability to continue providing all of our residents with athletic opportunities beyond what we do for our school kids. And then the last idea that came forward out of the facilities assessment was talking about our elementary school, the Wilcox building, and Bissell. And it was Walt Hoffman, as you know, he's the president of the council over in the village, who has served in multiple capacities for the Board of Education, most recently as a member of CHAD's Facilities Action Team, who helped us to understand that the property over at Bissell is actually greater than we thought it was. And so there's a drawing, it's ringed by the red line around the current, where the current building is and how far the property line exists. And one of the ideas that the members of the action team has asked us to consider is what would it be like to build an additional school, another school beyond the replacement for Dodge, to house preschool through grade 3. In our district this past year, the Board of Education provided the opportunity for us to expand preschool programming through our kindergarten preparatory program. And the data that we have been able to collect from the children who have participated in both the KPP as well as the integrated program shows phenomenal results because we're getting our students in early, providing them intervention and setting them on a course of learning sooner than we had otherwise. And so there is some great interest in expanding preschool, but Wilcox has no more space for us to do that. And so if we take a look at what the conceptual plan looks like here, there's actually enough space over on the Bissell property to build a building that would hold students in grades pre-K through 3, which would mean the current Wilcox property could be sold and used for another purpose, and we would be able to then expand the preschool. Again, as Chad mentioned, we want to make sure if we're going to build a new school that there is enough egress and that we separate car traffic from bus traffic because all of our schools at this point are struggling with the car-bus traffic situation. And so we wanted to be able to address that in any plans moving forward. So that is the last of the plans, things for us to consider. Obviously, this is a big ask of our community moving forward. And we have some final numbers for you to take a look at. Again, these are just approximates.
So with these, just to stress approximates and also just it's a wide variety of different options as you can see. So just to give a approximate cost for the various options. There are many variations of, like you'll see in here, renovation costs. Those renovation costs can range anywhere from a couple million to renovating RBC completely would be 8 million, and it depends on how far you want the community would want to go with some of the renovations. So some of these are just like we said, very much dependent on the community feedback that we receive and how far the renovations would need to go. But with these costs, you can see that we've tried to itemize the different costs based on what the community would be willing to support.
So that concludes our presentation this evening. As you can see, we have a lot of work to do, a lot of individuals to engage through conversations, not only with our elected officials like this evening, but also our parents, our residents, our senior citizens. And we're very proud of our facilities as they currently stand. They've done a great job in the education of many thousands of Tigers over the time. But what we do know is moving forward, some of those spaces need to be renovated so that we're able to continue to provide our students with the very best in educational opportunities. And we think that parts and pieces of this project are doable. We think parts and pieces of this project need further study, and we certainly appreciate any feedback that you can provide for us so that we can continue to sort of help the project evolve over time. Ultimately, we would like to be able to conclude a study of a discernment, for lack of a better word, by the end of the 1920 school year, so that the Board of Education can then, at that point, make some decisions about a potential bond issue that may replace the bonds from the 2021 when the high school is finally paid off. We appreciate your attention this evening. If you have any questions, we'd be happy to answer them as well.
How much is the total bill for everything on your, it looks like a lot.
Right. It's hard to say. The pieces
What
and
does
parts
that add up
added
to?
up together, if you're talking about every single thing that we've explained to you this evening, it's near on $100 million. So
Okay.
obviously, that's why we have work to do. Obviously, we know that's a lot of money to ask of our residents. We're providing information. It's now our time to listen and to gain the feedback from the residents so that we can provide a plan that provides opportunities for our students, but is also supported by the community.
When we built the high school, they came out and got a lot of residents involved in, with the architect in actually talking about how we were going to build it and what was going where in the building, and I was fortunate enough to be a part of that. I would hope you would do something like that again.
Right, that's the design process.
Yeah.
And that takes about a year to build. And so once we have a better indication as to what our residents, community members can afford and would like us to do, then the design process begins.
Right, it's down the road.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
You know, you've certainly put out a lot of information tonight. I'll
Yeah.
tell you, there's a lot to digest there, and
Yeah,
and you guys have your work cut out for you.
It's
But,
exciting.
you know, thank you for coming here and sharing that with us. And
You're very
I
welcome.
appreciate that. It was
Thank
nice
you.
to see, and I look forward to hearing from you again to see where you're going from this point on.
All right, we appreciate the opportunity.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
you.
Thank you.